accountability things like I usually do during the week, except this time I forgot to feed myself before I went on stream. So for the most part, um, you know, ask me questions for the first like half. I guess you're gonna be watching me eat also, because like, yeah, I forgot to eat, and hopefully this will be a good stream. My bad, dudes. I'm a little late. Like I said, I forgot to feed myself. Somebody left. So yeah, ask your questions in the comment below. I'm talking about Gimpy things. Uh, yeah. Oh, today we're going to talk about the ADA. So, yeah, ask your questions. We good. Also, there's a private chat on Restream. Oh, I see what it's for now. So what exactly is the ADA? For people who don't know, we're going to watch a little mini video on the ADA. Give me 1 second. Oh, YouTube's not working. Well, that puts a damper in my plans, dudes. I'm not gonna lie. I'm really stuck. Easy. If you're not doing anything, comma, can you ask random questions? Question mark. YouTube is not working. LOL. I don't know what's going on. YouTube is sucking right now, so I don't know what I'm going to be able to show you. I originally had plans. But I kind of wanted to talk about the ADA and why it's important. Like, a lot of people tend to think that the ADA was just intended to fix things, and that's not necessarily the case. I really don't like this viewer account. How do you get rid of it? Alright, so I'm going to be eating, but I'm going to put a random YouTube video on for you guys while I do that, because, like, I don't think you guys just want to hear me be quiet and eat, so we're going to do that. Let me see something. Yeah, I really don't like that. That's weird. Yeah, okay, so I'm going to put on a 14-minute video for you guys. I like this one. Let me know what you guys think in chat. And I'm going to be eating food, but I'm going to mute my mic because I know eating sounds irritate some people. Mute the mic, mute the mic, mute the mic. No, I don't do ASMR because I don't have a good enough mic to do that. But I mean, if You should be able to hear me now. My bad, I had the mic muted. Unless, let's see. Hello. Oh, shit. Okay. Okay, cool. Apparently, Restream changed my audio settings. So now you should be able to hear me. Cool. I mean, if you really want to hear me eat, like, okay. Originally, I was going to talk about the 88, but that's fine too. How are you today, by the way? So the only thing I have to eat is a noodle bowl. So yeah, that's what we're doing. It's not soupy enough. I wish you could minimize the second. I mean, honestly, that just kind of makes me sad because, like, people are just into different stuff. Thank you. You know, I listen to a lot of ASMRists, and, like, a lot of people on those channels and on those Twitch streams get called really weird, man. And to be honest, it's not weird. Like, you're into what you're into. And there's not really a problem with that unless it's hurting somebody. And, like, honestly, mukbang videos and ASMR don't hurt anyone ever. So yeah, forget about those people. So how are you today? I can't believe I'm eating on stream. I feel weird, but people liking this is not that weird. I've watched a lot of mukbang videos too. Exactly. The only thing in your stomach that hurts is after eating too much. And you know, sometimes, uh, like, that's not even a bad thing to eat too much because, man, food is so good. I almost feel like I should use my headset and eat with the headset on. I love seafood, man. Seafood is amazing. It's one of my favorite things. Crawfish, shrimp, crab, lobster, oysters, clam bakes. Love all that. Do you do mukbang videos, by the way? Because your name is kind of cool, Mukbang Mermaid. I mean, technically no, but I've only started streaming somewhat recently. I used to do, well, I used to do different stuff. I had a gaming channel for a while, and then I did videos on accessibility in gaming, and then now I do stuff on disability advocacy and philosophy as a way of life, pretty much. And sometimes I stream video games. Man, this thing is good. It's a spicy shrimp super meal noodle bowl thing. I'm bad at this. It's one of these. Tastes so good. Oh, I don't know if you can see this. I like these. These are quickly becoming my favorite cheap noodles. That's what I said, dude, and they're not expensive. I love freaking noodle bowls. Love freaking noodle bowls. You should. I gotta ask my friend where he bought this. Oh, I think he bought it at the gas station up the street from my house, which is a AM/PM. Hopefully they have this over wherever people are at. It's so good. The spiciness is a little bit like chili powder with lime and a little bit of jalapeno. I didn't think I would be eating on stream, so, you know. I'm glad somebody likes it. It makes me feel less weird, which is a good thing. Yeah. I wish they put more shrimp in here. That's my only complaint. I just realized I eat really fast. I'm gonna go check it out. Dude. People are gonna be watching the VOD and be like, why is this dude eating on stream? And the answer to that is because I'm hungry. Like, I always find it really weird when people are afraid to go to the bathroom or to eat on stream. I'm like, dude, they're normal. Oh, dude, Popeyes is so good. Popeyes is my favorite fried chicken. Grubhub is a lifesaver, man. DoorDash, Grubhub, Postmates, Uber Eats. It's weird because they all have separate menus supposedly, but like Church's chicken is really huge. I mean, but the great thing is if you're super hungry, they're really cheap and they still taste good. All right. I don't know, man. I might eat on stream again sometime. I actually don't mind. But so back to my original topic, unfortunately, because I was actually having fun doing that, but I ran out of food. So, like the ADA or the Americans with Disabilities Act was awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it. It was passed in 1990 by the first George Bush, right? And a lot of people seem to think that solved civil rights issues for people with disabilities. But today we're going to talk about some of the problems that I've run into personally and problems that people deal with all the time. Like one of the Instagram models that I follow, she uses a wheelchair. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen a standard like accessible parking spot, but usually there's like that space next to it with the white lines that are going in a diagonal direction across the rectangle, right? And a lot of people, believe it or not, even though it says no parking, what do you think they do? They park there. And then you're like, dude, why the hell are you parking there? Well, first, why shouldn't you park there? So for a lot of people that use wheelchairs, right, that space is for people to get out of the passenger side and put the chair next to the car so that people can transfer from the car to the wheelchair. If you park a car there, obviously people aren't going to be able to do that. That's one major issue. I see a lot of people that park in those little spaces in between parking spots, between the accessible spot and the next parking spot over. And so basically you end up blocking two people in because now you're taking up the spot next to the wheelchair accessible spot, and you're preventing the person in a wheelchair from transferring out of the car. And I don't know about you, but like, no matter what way you try to look at it, that's kind of an asshole move, right? And the other really common thing, and this is just day-to-day stuff that has to do with ADA. So the other really common thing that I see people do is use the accessibility stall in a public bathroom. Why does that suck? So there are two types of accessible stalls. One is called a half stall or an ambulatory stall, and the other one is the full accessible stall, the big ass one. So the big ass ones usually have two grab rails. One is either on the left or right of the stall, and the second is perpendicular and it runs over the top of the back of the toilet. And those are to help people either stand or transfer from a wheelchair or from standing position to the toilet. And the most obvious reason you, as a person who is able-bodied and can walk, should think twice before using those stalls is because, like, I don't know if you... Oh, you can't see my wheelchair, damn it. Let me see if I can... Shit. I suck at life. So I don't know. I'm trying to get you guys to see my wheelchair, but it's not working. Right? It's not really working. But I use a wheelchair, get around in it every day, and those are the only stalls that I can fit my chair in. You know what I mean? So if somebody else is using it, then how am I supposed to use it? And literally, I don't know if you guys know this, but according to federal law, public spaces are only required to put one accessible restroom in the men's restroom and one accessible restroom in the women's restroom. And for unisex bathrooms, it's usually just the one toilet or a toilet and a urinal. So when it comes to individual gendered restrooms, there's only a requirement to have one accessible stall per restroom. Now you might be saying, well, Captain Gimpy, like, shouldn't they put more in there? Yeah, they should. But so the thing is, for businesses, prior to the passage of the ADA in 1990, and even after the passage of the ADA, there was a strong attitude of, and I'm going to use some offensive language because this was the language used by people who were opposing the ADA. There were people that have literally said, why should I have to pay extra money to accommodate these retards? Now, I understand that I just used a really generally offensive word, right? But that was both the language and the sentiment used to describe opposition to the passage of ADA by many, many business owners across the country from east to west and north to south. And the only people that I'm aware of that did not have this type of attitude were people that either already had a sizable disabled patronage to their business, or who were disabled themselves or were involved in activism in some form for obvious reasons, right? So when you look at it that way and you look at the Americans with Disabilities Act, there were several compromises. The biggest one that I don't think people are aware of is that according to the ADA, there was a 30-year window from the time the ADA passed to businesses being required to become compliant. So if we think about that for a second, the ADA was passed in 90, it went into effect 2 years later. So 30 years from that point in time, 1990 to 30 years after, is what? 2020. So that deadline passed. So why are people still angry? One is because the ADA exempts historical sites from having to make any adjustments to make their establishments accessible to people in wheelchairs, accessible to the blind, accessible to the deaf community. Also, we have to take into account conditions that affect one's cognitive ability, right? So certain things help with that. Like, for example, with dyslexia. One of the ways, so I haven't been diagnosed with dyslexia, but I have a lot of eye tracking issues when I try to read out of a textbook. I skip a lot of lines, I skip words, and on occasion, words do get kind of mutated in my head to other words, or sometimes complete gibberish. And from what I understand, that's a dyslexia symptom. So, and like I have the ADHDs and the autism spectrums also. And so one of the things that helps with those types of conditions, I don't want to call them disorders because, I mean, they're just a different way of processing information by your brain, right? It's atypical because it deviates from a statistical average, not that there's necessarily something wrong with it. And that's one thing I want to touch on. I'm probably going to touch on that after the video. So one of the things you can do, for example, like I said, historical sites aren't required to make any physical accommodations for people that need them. And the argument for that is messing with a historical building in such a way damages the integrity of the structure and the historicity of it, or rather the historical significance, right? But if you cared about the historical significance of a landmark, wouldn't you want more people to be able to share in the reasons why that specific museum, landmark, or other kind of building exists? It just seems counterintuitive to me that that was an exemption, but that was one exemption made. The other exemption that was initially made is that private establishments were originally not required to provide physical access. That has since changed, and it's become a part of federal law that businesses in general are required to make reasonable accommodation to provide physical access to a building. But that wasn't always the case. So that's one reason why disability advocates are still up in arms about this sort of thing. And we should be. I say we because I get cranky about these things. Very cranky. And the other thing is that the ADA Education and Reform Act basically extended the window by somewhere between 10 to 20 years for full compliance to the ADA. And a lot of people feel, as do I, that making that kind of extension undermines the ADA. And, you know, for obvious reasons, I have to fucking agree. Like, there is no reason why, in the year 2020, 30 years after the ADA has passed, that this should be a thing. So, like, I've talked about parking spots. I've talked about restrooms. The next thing I'm going to do is actually go to the bathroom. So I'm going to leave a 15-minute video on, and I'm probably going to get a copyright claim. But, you know, the information and the perspective that I'm trying to provide you guys is way more important to me than that. So that's just going to have to be a thing. Give me a second. Share audio.
Thank you. By the time I was 21, I weighed 21 stone. Here's a photograph of me cooking something that looks like it was going to be very healthy. When I was larger, I felt that the whole world was looking at me and thinking negative things. I would never eat food out alone in public because I decided that whatever I was eating, someone was probably judging me. If I was eating a salad, they were thinking, yeah, that's not what she eats every day, is it? And if I was eating a chocolate bar, they were thinking, of course she's fat, eat a salad. For the most part, people didn't comment on my weight publicly. But when I started using a wheelchair, a weird thing happened. People started treating my body and my disability like it was a subject open for public discourse. The problem with these comments is they're very often dressed up as compliments, forcing me into a position where I have to decide how to engage with this person who's obviously not meaning to be offensive to me. People regularly come up to me on nights out and say, "It is amazing to see you in this club," which was only legitimate at the time I swooped to the front of the long queue at Revenge 2 minutes before the cheap entry deadline and got 14 of my friends let in to carry me up the several flights of stairs. Although on that occasion, I wasn't actually congratulated for being in a seemingly very inaccessible club. I was told that you don't see people like me out having fun very often. I was a bit worried that you guys might think that I don't know how to have fun, so there I am goofing around at a wedding, just in case anyone needed proof of that. It's a regular thought, one of not seeing me out or being impressed by my presence. There was one man who, on 3 separate occasions on the bus route back to my house in New Cross, insisted on congratulating me for getting out and not letting it hold me back. I can only assume that the it he was talking about on the 3rd occasion was the very intense hangover that caused me to get off the bus when I could see my front door and throw up into a bin. Another favourite was a lady who came up to me in the supermarket and she bent right over me and she said, "You're very stylish," which was nice, until she topped it off with, "For someone in a wheelchair," which did undermine the compliment a little bit. It seems to come as a surprise to these people that I have hobbies and a social life and a love of dressing myself in shirts my friends said looked like the inside of a 90s caravan. The problem with these kind of comments is they cause me to feel both hypervisible and also completely invisible as a person. When people project their ideas of what they think disability is onto me, they reduce me to a selection of stereotypes based on the things that they've presumed about my life. But my life and my disability is individual to me, and there are so many things that you wouldn't know about me just from looking at my wheelchair. People don't know that I fought through years of severe dislocations and extensive surgery and very poor mental health to complete my A-levels and my degree. And that after uni, I had to move home, be cared for by my mum, and for over 3 years, I wouldn't go out alone. The first time I went out by myself in a wheelchair, I was still at university in Bristol. And I'd figured out that if I parked between the 2 entrances of Cabot Circus, that I could take the slope down on one side to the shops that I wanted to go to, get the lift back up to the next floor, and follow the slope down on the other side to get back to my car whilst doing the absolute bare minimum of wheeling. I was so proud of that achievement, but it had taken weeks of talking myself into and powering through the fear that if something didn't quite go to plan, then I was just going to be stuck in the middle of the shopping centre or have to ask a stranger for help, exposing my vulnerabilities. Now, when I look back on that time, I can see just how far I've come in my journey to manage my disability and live the life I want to. Which leads me on to what most people think is my most impressive achievement, going backpacking across Southeast Asia for 3 months. It meant that, like when I first became disabled, I had to accept that I was going to need to rely on help, on someone else for help for everything, which felt like an uncomfortable step backwards at times. But I got to experience things I never in a million years thought I would get to. Here I'm scuba diving. Whilst everyone else was gracefully easing through the water, I was awkwardly doggy paddling around with my floppy paralysed foot just trailing behind me. And here I've wheeled into a river to wash an elephant with a tiny bucket, discovering that with my weak arms and my low height in the wheelchair, that I really just gave the elephant very clean knees. I also rode on the back of motorbikes, and here I'd rented one with a sidecar for stability. Unfortunately, I discovered that keeping my legs away from hot exhaust pipes is not a skill I possess, and came home with 2 new scars to add to my extensive collection. That trip is probably one of the best things that I can tell people about disability, that you can still achieve the things you want to, you just have to get creative about how you do it. So when people tell me it's amazing to see me out, they could well be right, because on many days, the fears I had the first time I went out alone in a wheelchair are still there. And I may have battled pain and anxiety and fatigue to get there, taken inaccessible or long-winded forms of transport, or had to gain access by being carried like an emperor. But if they think it's impressive because my life is otherwise meaningless and unfulfilled, they're completely wrong. None of these achievements are an indication that I've overcome my disability. My disability and my mental health is not something I'm trying to overcome. It's something that I'm learning to live alongside. But our media is always really keen to categorize disabled people. This, as a best case scenario, we're painted as superheroes who have overcome our disability. This headline from a real newspaper says, "Superhuman and then some, 5 athletes who symbolize triumph of will over adversity." Or, we're painted as sad people to be pitied. Just 2 faulty genes derailed my life. A mother on the great losses and lessons of her daughter's disability. Or, possibly most harmfully, the benefits grounder rhetoric. Work-shy map of Britain revealed. Thousands of incapacity benefit claimants found to be capable of working. I'm none of these things, and I'm a bit of all of those things. Disability isn't binary, and most people fall somewhere into the spectrum of grey. On a bad day, I struggle to look after myself properly, and on a good day, I bum shuffled up a waterfall for 2 hours in Laos. So what's my headline if you had to give me one? Is it amazing wheelchair user overcomes barriers to go traveling? Or is it sad disabled woman tries to escape her miserable life by going to Southeast Asia for 3 months? Or woman claims to use wheelchair but is seen halfway up a waterfall? There are things that you can easily see about me, like I'm white, female, and about 30. And there are things that you can probably quite quickly figure out when you talk to me, like I'm left-wing, feminist, and gay. And then there are things that you wouldn't know about me unless we were having a conversation and I told you, like I hate coriander, I put cold water in the top of my tea, and I collect antique dog photographs. My disability is part of my identity in the same way that all those other things are. But this is where people start to feel uncomfortable because they think that asking about my disability, or maybe even acknowledging it, is rude, and that it does the thing that I'm trying to avoid, reduces me to my disability. In many cases, that is true. Someone recently came up to me in a shop and asked me what my condition was. She hadn't even said hello. And then who my specialists were and what medication I was taking, which is a list I struggle to keep track of myself, to be honest. But we live in a world that is not particularly well geared up for meeting the needs of disabled people, and that means that there will be times when that needs to be discussed. These are 2 of the most common examples of barriers that I face. Things that will tip me out on my face and stairs. So in the meantime, if there are stairs into a property, I'm either going to need a ramp or I'm going to need help getting up those stairs. And crucially, I also need advance information about that, because it's not possible for me to just assume I can independently go anywhere I want to go. If we're talking about utopia, That would be my end goal, one where man-made barriers don't inhibit my freedom. A utopic world for me would also be one where the presence of disability is so mainstream that people are no longer surprised by or uncomfortable about it. What I want you to do is start by imagining disabled people in the middle of the action and then asking the questions to make that happen. It's okay to ask me questions and acknowledge that there might be barriers that prevent me from participating fully. But it's only by having those conversations that we open up the world to a group of people who are currently excluded from it. To give an example of the right way to have those conversations, on London buses, there's often competition for the wheelchair space with buggy users. And I get all kinds of reactions to my presence. Quite often, I'm just completely ignored, despite the fact a giant siren goes off when the wheelchair ramp comes down. I also have had people make a massive scene of getting off the bus unnecessarily or refuse to fold their buggy and share the space with me. People also regularly do try to be helpful, but end up moving into the space that I needed to turn my wheelchair in. What I want people to do in that situation is just come to where we can have a conversation and say, is there any way that I can help you here? That paves the way for me to explain what help I might need without feeling like a massive inconvenience or a public spectacle. When my disability makes me feel like an inconvenience, it makes me angry, but it also just makes me want to hide in the house. Access is about believing that disabled people have a right to participation.
Don't worry,
and
I'll
each and every one of us is responsible.
I just thought this video was important.
The problem is, it's a vicious cycle. Whilst disabled people are barred from accessing the world, people don't notice we're not there and ask why. It seems like some people are comfortable having conversations about my disability to me, but they seem much less comfortable having those conversations with me. But making those changes requires discussions and a commitment to doing better. When society takes a collective approach to making access a priority, it stops becoming solely my problem. Thank you.
What's up, dudes? Here I am again. Anyway, I thought that video was a super important one to share, and it's also one that is going to get me a copyright claim on YouTube. Because anytime you do what I just did, even if the organization itself really doesn't care, it happens. But what I wanted to do was to share the perspective in whole, because I think that the most important thing is to be able to let people share their experience of their disability and how they relate to society. Now, so a couple of things that I wanted to mention myself in response to that video is, first of all, I thought it was amazing. I think she's amazing, but one thing I wanted to say is that, so I was a deaf studies major. I have a degree in American Sign Language and Deaf Studies. And when I first started, I basically just wanted to learn ASL because I wanted to learn another language. I just wanted to teach myself another language. And then I met, before that happened, I'd met the person who was teaching all of those classes at a local community college. And I got to know her and we started talking, and we had a lot of stuff in common from completely different points of view. And when I say points of view, it's not that we disagreed on a lot of things. Quite the opposite. But we were coming at it from two very different set of experiences. She felt excluded by both the hearing and deaf communities because of the way she grew up. She grew up like a lot of deaf people in hearing families. In fact, like 90% of deaf children are born to hearing parents. So she grew up in a hearing world as a deaf person. And the way that she learned to communicate was something that was frowned upon during the time that she was growing up. And in my case, it was mostly physical barriers and people's presumption of me as a person based on those things. Like the fact that I can't walk somehow means that I'm less of a person. I've talked about this before, but I've had girls refuse to go out with me because, and I quote, "Ew, you're in a wheelchair. Why would I want to go out with you?" Because I'm freaking dope. That's why. I'm smart. I can be funny. I'm passionate about things. Uh, I eat on live streams, and I drink drinks on live streams. I have a lot of different interests, some intellectual and some not. I like sex with the right people, just like anybody else. I have dreams, aspirations, fears, hopes. If all that sounds pretty vanilla, it's because it is, because everybody has them. And as I got to know her, like, I started wanting to learn ASL just because I wanted to learn another language. Like, I had taught myself Spanish. I'm a native English speaker. And I was like, oh, let's do language number 3. So I figured, why not learn ASL? My mom was taking American Sign Language and Deaf Studies classes. And at first, she tricked me into going to those classes just so I could practice ASL. And then I got roped into showing up every day, and then I got enrolled. And over the course of that time, I got to experience what it was like, again, not to know a language, not to be able to communicate. And I got to learn about a culture that was mysterious to me in a way, but at the same time, there was a lot of it I understood and had my own points of view on, because there's so much similarity there. One thing I want to say is that one of the frightening things about TED as an organization is that they often rely on auto-generated subtitles on YouTube, especially when it comes to TEDx videos. And let me explain why that's not good enough. That doesn't count as closed captioning, because closed captioning allows someone to manually put cues for things like laughter, applause, any random noise that appeared during a speech or in a movie, that auto-generated captions will never do. And if you speak with an accent that's not standard British received pronunciation or nondescript American, auto-generated captioning is just plain inaccurate. It's gotten a lot better over the years since Google first introduced the feature, but it's not good enough. By anywhere near good enough to be serviceable for people that need them. And that includes people with ADHD, because often getting an auditory cue plus the visual cue of the subtitles is enough to help us retain information, right? Which people don't think about. The elderly who are hard of hearing, people who were born with a condition that made them hard of hearing, like persistent glue ear, or like a bunch of ear infections will eventually take away your hearing, or tinnitus because of damage to the ear and things of that nature. So yeah, we need to do better with subtitling. And I hear what you're saying. You're like, oh, Captain Gimpy, you don't have subtitles. You're right, I don't. And there's two reasons for that. One is my fault, and the other isn't. One is my fault because I'm really lazy, and subtitling is really hard. I don't know if you've ever tried to caption a video on your own, but unless you've already written a script, it's extremely difficult. Um, the second thing, like, this is a personal gripe, I don't like my own voice. And then I have to listen to my voice, and I have to type everything that I said. The thing that's not my fault is that on some platforms like Twitch, the only way to get captions is to pay for a live captioning service or a service that allows you to use a similar AI algorithm to generate subtitles. And if I'm being perfectly honest with you, I don't have the money. I can't afford to caption my Twitch streams. And unfortunately, I feel horrible because to me, these are the streams that need captioning the most. Because I want to make all my content accessible to deaf people and other people who just find subtitles useful. The other thing I wanted to say about that video is that she's obviously not from the United States. In every single thing she said in that talk, I relate to very, very directly. So let me be clear. Like, one of the things about the deaf community is that when you meet another deaf person, from what I can tell, right, as an outsider, because I can hear, and signing is a non-native language of mine. So there's two reasons I consider myself an outsider. And it's disrespectful to say that I'm part of the deaf community when I'm not, in my opinion. But, like, there's an immediate understanding. Like, even if you have two completely different worldviews, there's a sense of immediate understanding when two deaf people find each other in a sea of hearing people. And when I was listening to this woman speak, I felt the same. Because everything she said in that video are things that I've experienced, not just because I've heard so many stories, but because all of those things, every single one, has happened to me. And so people say, oh, why are you so up in arms about the ADA? Like, it's too big government. It's too... I've heard the word fascist by people that don't even understand what fascism means. And it's because you're wrong. I'm not leaning on the ADA to give myself an advantage over you. I lean on the ADA as a means of giving myself an equal playing field to everyone else. Just to share a little bit with you before I sort of tie things up. I've been denied an interview, not given a call back after submitting a resume, because I disclosed my disabilities up front. Officially documented, I have major depressive disorder and cerebral palsy. Undocumented, but diagnosed, ADHD and autism spectrum disorder. So if I disclose those, I immediately, in most cases, will be denied a callback, a second interview, or whatever. I've gotten to the point where I've gotten past the phone interview, and upon seeing me in person and watching their demeanor, I knew right away that I wasn't going to get the job, even before the second interview began. That's a problem. That's something that technically the ADA prevents, if you can prove that's what's happening. But how do you prove that? When it's your word against the word of a prospective employer. And many of them have very good legal departments. The ones that don't are more willing to hire you. I hate to put it that way. But it's true, because they don't want to be sued. They don't want the trouble. The other thing is what I want to do specifically with Twitch and YouTube, and like what I would like to do moving forward. So, a little bit about me as a person, right? If you've been watching this stream for a while, you know a little bit about me, but like my goals are things that you don't know. I have an academic background in game development. I've worked a little bit in game development as an iPhone developer back during first and second generation iOS devices. I haven't since. The development process has changed significantly, and I've lost a lot of that skill, but I remember what it was like to be in the conception phase of a game, in the development phase, and the latter end of the development phase when you are in crunch and you're playtesting and you're fixing bugs and you're working way too many hours and your brain is fried and nobody gives a shit about accessibility. So that's one thing I still care about. A few years ago, I tried to do a weekly show about accessibility in the games industry, and there wasn't much to say then, because during that period, there weren't a lot of people talking about it, and even if there were not a lot of new developments. But over the course of producing that show with a friend of mine who you've seen on YouTube with me doing movie reviews, which is another thing I love, and I'm going to get back to doing all of that. Basically, like, dude, my time is going to be spent between, like, playing video games for review purposes, watching movies for review purposes, and doing this sort of thing. But, like, currently I'm looking for a disability studies program to apply to because I want to transition into doing more in that space. Because I have an academic background in game development and some minor game development experience firsthand, I would like to start working more in accessibility in video games, whether that's playtesting accessibility features, lobbying for more accessibility features to be included. By the way, I'm going to be doing an accessibility review of Control, but first I need to finish the game, and it's too engrossing for me to do quickly. So that's going to be a while. You have to give me some time. Second, I'm studying to become a life coach because I don't have the patience for a psych degree, and the kinds of relationships you can form with your clients are not always the most direct help when it comes to working with gamers and people with disabilities and where those things might intersect. Specifically with this channel, I want to focus on building a community, first and foremost. I need help developing an identity package for both channels, preferably ones that I can repurpose for both YouTube and Twitch. Let's see, what else was I going to say? You know, like, it'd be nice to have my own studio space, but I'm not really looking for that right now. I just, if you guys, literally, like, if you have any constructive critiques, any advice on how to grow a community around this subject, if you can invite your friends, share my streams, share my videos, summarize my thoughts, and start discussions, I would really, really appreciate it. I'm going to spend the next couple weeks getting Twitch all set up and talking to people who are more experienced than I am, using the platform. And I really, really hope that you find what I do valuable. And if you don't, but you know somebody who will, tell them. And if you want to come on the show, oh, that was the other thing. Yes. If you have a condition that you would like to talk about, that you would like to educate people on, I would love to have an on-stream discussion with you where we can just ask each other questions and have an honest conversation about what it's like. Because I think that's the most important thing. We need to start talking to each other. It's really important. So if you or anyone you know would like to come on my little stream here, let me find the thingy with my email in it. Ooh, no, I deleted it. Okay, let me make another one. But yeah, I would love to have long-form discussions with other people with CP or spina bifida, muscular dystrophy, MS, certain cognitive challenges, and that sort of, like anything, dude. Like literally anything. It would be my pleasure. If you want to come on, I'm going to be putting my email on the screen very soon. I'm typing it right now. Sorry. Let me make sure that's correct. So, yeah. What the hell, dude? Okay, there we go. Okay, so if you would like to come on and actually have a conversation, please feel free to hit me up at that email. And, just leave me a brief message, like telling me whatever you'd like about yourself and what you would like to come on and talk about. And hopefully we can help each other. Like, hopefully we can understand each other and help other people understand us. And, man, I would just like to talk to more people. With that being said, dudes, I think I'm out for the day. Thank you so much for coming to hang out with me. I appreciate you all. Love you all. Talk to you soon. Love, peace, and chicken grease. Victory. Victory. Bye.